The silver cutlery slipped from Amanda's trembling hands, producing a metallic clang that echoed through the elegant hall of Palazzo, the city's most exclusive restaurant. Dozens of disapproving eyes turned toward her, including those of Thomas Mitchell, the feared CEO of Mitchell Enterprises, dining at the neighboring table. "Sorry, sir," Amanda murmured, quickly bending down to retrieve the fallen fork. Her face burned with embarrassment as she felt the icy gaze of the businessman fixed on her. "Typical," Mitchell remarked, his voice dripping with disdain. "The quality of service at this establishment is plummeting." Amanda swallowed hard, fighting back the tears threatening to spill. At 23, she had learned to deal with difficult customers, but something about Thomas Mitchell's imposing presence made her particularly uneasy. Perhaps it was the impeccably tailored $10,000 Italian suit or the golden Rolex gleaming on his wrist, a stark contrast to her simple, worn-out uniform. "Amanda?" Margaret's sharp voice pierced through the air. The restaurant manager stood at the other end of the room, her tone brooking no argument. "My office. Now." With a heavy heart, Amanda followed Margaret to the back office. The small, stifling space was adorned with framed photographs of celebrities who had once frequented the restaurant. "This is the third complaint this week," Margaret began, massaging her temples. "Mr. Mitchell is our most important client. He practically keeps this place running." "I know, I'm sorry," Amanda replied, nervously wringing her hands. "It won't happen again." Margaret sighed deeply. "Amanda, you're a good girl. I know you're working hard to pay for your younger sister's medical school tuition, but..." "Please," Amanda interrupted, her voice trembling. "I need this job. Emma depends on me." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret studied the young face before her, noticing the deep circles under Amanda's eyes and the exhaustion etched into every feature. "All right," Margaret finally relented. "Last chance. But stay away from Mr. Mitchell's table for the rest of the night." Amanda nodded gratefully and returned to the dining hall. The night promised to be long, but she was determined not to make any more mistakes. Her savings barely covered Emma's tuition fees, and losing this job would spell the end of her sister's dream of becoming a doctor. While serving other tables, Amanda couldn't help but steal glances at Thomas Mitchell out of the corner of her eye. There was something disturbingly familiar about his features, like a distant memory she couldn't quite grasp. The businessman dined alone, methodically cutting his steak into perfectly even pieces, occasionally glancing at his phone with a stern expression. The night progressed without further incidents until Amanda heard a commotion coming from Mitchell's table. The businessman had risen abruptly, his usually pale face now flushed a deep red. "This is unacceptable," he bellowed, brandishing his phone like a weapon. "Who's responsible for the wine cellar?" The sommelier, an elderly man named Robert, approached, visibly trembling. "May I assist you, Mr. Mitchell?" "This wine," Mitchell pointed to the bottle on his table, "costs over $2,000. And I've just discovered you're serving me a cheap counterfeit." The entire restaurant plunged into an eerie silence. Amanda watched the scene unfold, feeling a mixture of pity and fascination. Robert, who had been with Palazzo for over 2 decades, looked as though he might collapse. "Mr. Mitchell," Robert began cautiously, "I can assure you that all our wines are authentic. Don't lie to me." Mitchell thundered, his voice echoing across the room. "I've been collecting wine longer than you've worked here. I demand to speak with the owner immediately." At that moment, something clicked in Amanda's mind. The way Mitchell gestured, the shape of his nose, the tone of his voice when angry, it was identical to her late mother, Caroline. The old photographs Amanda kept at home suddenly took on a whole new meaning. Her heart pounded uncontrollably as a specific memory surfaced. Her mother, days before her passing, tearfully confessing that Amanda's father was a powerful man who had never known of her existence. A man Caroline had met while working as a secretary at a major company 24 years ago. Amanda felt her legs weaken beneath her. The dates lined up perfectly. Her mother's maiden name was Mitchell, a detail she'd always assumed was a mere coincidence. As Thomas Mitchell continued his furious tirade about the wine's authenticity, Amanda observed him with new eyes. The same explosive temper, the identical gestures, even the way he furrowed his brow mirrored her own. How had she not seen it before? "Amanda?" Margaret's voice jolted her back to reality. "Help clear the glasses from table 7. Moving automatically, Amanda approached the table adjacent to Mitchell's. Her hands trembled more than ever, and her mind raced with the implications of her discovery. This man, the tyrant who had repeatedly humiliated her over the past weeks, could he truly be her father? Then the inevitable happened. As she attempted to balance a tray of empty glasses, Amanda tripped. Time seemed to slow as she fell, the glasses flying in a perfect trajectory toward Thomas Mitchell. The sound of shattering crystal was followed by gasps of shock. Mitchell was drenched in red wine, his expensive Italian suit ruined, shards of glass scattered at his feet. "You incompetent fool," he roared, stepping toward Amanda with clenched fists. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" Amanda remained frozen, staring at the man before her. All the puzzle pieces finally fell into place and a surge of emotions, rage, fear, sadness, and an odd sense of relief, coursed through her. "Answer me when I'm speaking to you," Mitchell demanded, his face just inches from hers. That's when Amanda did something that shocked everyone present, including herself. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile that made Mitchell take an instinctive step back. "You're right," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I am incompetent. Must be a family trait, father." The silence that followed was absolute. Mitchell froze, his face shifting rapidly from red to pale white. His eyes, identical to Amanda's, widened in recognition and horror. What did you just say?" he stammered, all traces of his former arrogance instantly evaporating. Amanda held his gaze, feeling a strength she never knew she possessed. "Caroline Mitchell was my mother. She worked as your secretary 24 years ago. Do the math." The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the moment when the mighty Thomas Mitchell came face to face with his past in the most unexpected way possible. And so, on an otherwise ordinary night at work, Amanda's world was turned upside down. She had found her father, the man who had never known of her existence, the man who had treated her with such disdain. Fate had a peculiar sense of humor, and this was just the first chapter of a story that would change the lives of everyone involved. The chaos that followed her revelation was deafening. Margaret rushed to the table, trying desperately to contain the situation, while other diners whispered and filmed discreetly on their phones. Thomas Mitchell remained frozen, his face a mask of shock and confusion. "Everyone out," Margaret bellowed, addressing the patrons. "The restaurant is closing early tonight." While the other employees hurriedly began escorting the clients out, Mitchell finally found his voice. "My office." "Now," he said, his voice no longer authoritative but trembling. Amanda followed Mitchell to his car, a gleaming black Bentley. The drive to the Mitchell Enterprises building was made in complete silence, the tension so thick it could have been cut with a knife. Amanda watched the city pass by the window, her reflection merging with the night lights, while her mind tried to process the events of the night. Mitchell's office took up the entire top floor of an imposing skyscraper. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights twinkled like earthly stars. Mitchell poured himself a generous amount of whiskey before finally facing Amanda. "Prove it," he said dryly. "Prove that Caroline was your mother." With trembling hands, Amanda grabbed her phone and opened her photo gallery. There it was, the image she had carried with her for years. Her mother, young and radiant, wearing a blue dress at a company party. The date stamped in the lower corner, December 1999. Mitchell took the phone, his fingers gripping it so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "I remember this day," he murmured, his voice distant. "It was at the company's Christmas party. Caroline, she was so beautiful. She never stopped loving you," Amanda said softly. "Even after all these years." Mitchell let out a bitter laugh. "Love. She left without saying a word. Disappeared like smoke? Because she found out she was pregnant," Amanda retorted, her voice now heavy with emotion. "And she knew a baby would ruin her precious reputation. You were about to marry the daughter of your biggest investor." The silence that followed was deafening. Mitchell staggered to his leather chair, suddenly looking much older and more tired. "Patricia," he murmured. "My wife, ex-wife now. The marriage lasted only 5 years, but the business deal it provided built this empire." Amanda studied the man before her, trying to reconcile this vulnerable version with the tyrant she had met at the restaurant. "My mother died 3 years ago," she finally said. "Cancer. Her last words were about you." Mitchell looked up, a solitary tear trailing down his face. "What did she say?" "She hoped you had found the happiness you were looking for," Amanda replied, her own voice choking up. "And she regretted not being brave enough to fight for you too." Mitchell suddenly stood, walking over to the window. His silhouette framed against the city's illuminated skyline. "All these years, I could have known my daughter. I could have helped, I could have." "You could have," Amanda interrupted, "but you didn't. Instead, you spent the last few weeks humiliating me at the restaurant, treating me like garbage." "I didn't know," Mitchell protested, turning to face her. "And that makes it okay?" Treating people like they're beneath you just because you don't know who they are? Amanda felt years of repressed anger spilling over. Do you know why I work at that restaurant? To pay for my younger sister's medical school. Emma is 18 and she has a dream. And I will do anything to make that dream come true, even if it means being humiliated by people like you. The mention of Emma seemed to hit Mitchell like a physical blow. I have another daughter? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Amanda shook her head. No. Emma is my half-sister. Unlike you, Mom's second husband stayed with us until the end. Mitchell collapsed into his chair, running his hands over his face. I ruined everything, didn't I? First with your mother, then with you. I'm really the monster everyone says I am. It's not too late to change, Amanda said, surprising herself with her own words. But it will take more than pretty words and late regret. Mitchell looked up, meeting her eyes. The same grayish-blue hue, the same determination. What do you mean? I want you to prove you can be a better person, Amanda replied, her voice steady. Not just for me but for everyone around you. Start by treating your employees with respect. Use your power to help, not to intimidate. And you? Mitchell asked hesitantly. Would you give me a chance to try being a father? Amanda felt her heart tighten. I don't know, she answered honestly. 23 years is a long time to make up for. But I'm willing to see you try. At that moment, Amanda's phone vibrated. It was Emma, worried about her delay in returning home. The reality of the outside world began to creep back in. I have to go, Amanda said, standing up. My sister is waiting. Mitchell stood as well, seeming lost about what to do. Can I call you tomorrow? Amanda gave a slight nod. You can. But don't expect miracles, Mr. Mitchell. Thomas, he corrected softly. Please call me Thomas. As the elevator descended, Amanda felt the weight of the night's events finally settling over her. She had found her father. The man who for years had been nothing more than a shadow in her life, a blank space in her story. Now he had a face, a voice, and most importantly, a chance for redemption. What Amanda didn't know was that her words had planted a seed of change in Thomas Mitchell, a seed that would soon begin to blossom in ways no one could have predicted. The truth had been revealed, but the price of that revelation was yet to be determined. 2 weeks had passed since the night of the revelation at the restaurant. Amanda had quit her job at Palazzo, unable to continue working in an environment where everyone looked at her differently after learning about her connection to Thomas Mitchell. The small apartment she shared with Emma, usually a comforting refuge, now felt suffocating as she faced the growing pile of bills on the kitchen table. The weak morning light filtered through the fogged-up window, illuminating the dozens of circles and notes Amanda had made in her worn notebook. Every crossed-out number represented yet another failed attempt to balance the accounts. The sound of her pen scratching the paper blended with the incessant ticking of the clock on the wall, a constant reminder of time and money slipping through her fingers. Are you sure you don't want to accept his help? Emma asked for the third time that week, watching her older sister bite her lip in concentration. At 18, Emma carried an maturity in her eyes beyond her years, a result of growing up seeing Amanda sacrifice everything for her. I'm sure, Amanda replied firmly, though her stomach twisted with doubt. I don't want his money. It would make everything different. I can't just let him buy his way back into our lives. The phone vibrated again on the table, making both sisters jump. It was the third message from Thomas that morning. Amanda could feel the weight of Emma's gaze as she ignored yet another notification. He's trying, Amanda, Emma insisted, her voice soft but persistent. I saw on the news that he even changed the company policies. He raised salaries, implemented new benefits. That has to mean something, right? Amanda closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the last 2 weeks. Thomas had been relentless in his attempts to reach her, alternating between hesitant messages about the weather and increasingly insistent offers of financial help. Every notification felt like a small stab to her heart, a reminder of the 23 years of absence that no amount of money could erase. Finally, giving in to her curiosity, Amanda picked up her phone. The message was different this time, making her heart skip a beat. I need to tell you something important. It's about your mother. Please meet me at the cafe on the corner of Mitchell Enterprises at 3 p.m. There's something you need to know. The cafe was a discreet establishment, mostly frequented by executives from the building. The rich aroma of freshly ground coffee and the soft murmur of business conversations filled the air when Amanda arrived, precisely at 3 in the afternoon. Her waitress uniform had been swapped for jeans and a simple blouse, clothes that made her feel out of place in the refined environment. Thomas was already seated at a table in the back, a brown leather folder on the table. Amanda noticed he seemed different. His usual impeccable suit was replaced by a more casual dress shirt, and there were deep dark circles under his eyes. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice carrying a tension Amanda had never noticed before. "There's something you need to see." With hands that seemed slightly trembling, Thomas opened the folder and pulled out a yellowed envelope. The paper was slightly creased at the edges, as if it had been handled many times over the years. "I found this in my old safe," he explained, his voice low and intense. "These are letters from your mother. She tried to tell me about you." Amanda felt as though all the air had been sucked out of her lungs. "What?" "Caroline sent these letters in the first months after she left," Thomas continued, and Amanda noticed his hands were trembling too. "But I never read them. I had my secretary instructed to intercept any correspondence from her. I was hurt, too proud to accept that she had left me. I thought I was protecting myself, but in reality..." Here is the continuation of the translation. "You're hiding," Amanda completed, her voice barely rising above a whisper. With trembling hands she picked up the first letter. The paper was thin, almost translucent with age, and her mother's handwriting, elegant and familiar, covered several pages in faded blue ink. "Dear Thomas, by the time you read this letter, I will already be gone. I carry with me not just a broken heart but a new life. Our baby. I know the timing couldn't be worse, with your wedding approaching and the business merger at stake." The words began to blur before Amanda's eyes, unshed tears fogging her vision. Each line was like a window to the past, revealing a truth she had never imagined. "Why are you showing me this now?" she asked, her voice choked with contained emotion. "Because I realized I need to be honest." "Completely honest," Thomas replied, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that Amanda had never heard before. "I wasn't just an absent father. I was a coward who chose to ignore the truth when it tried to reach me. Each one of these letters represents a chance I wasted to be part of your life." It was at that moment that the door to the cafe swung open violently, the bell above it ringing loudly enough to make several customers jump. Patricia Reynolds Mitchell, Thomas's ex-wife, stormed in like a hurricane, her Christian Louboutin heels tapping furiously against the wooden floor. Her immaculate Chanel suit stood in stark contrast to the distorted fury on her face. "So it's true," she exclaimed, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "The bastard really does exist." Amanda froze, the letters still in her hands, trembling slightly. The entire cafe sank into a deathly silence, dozens of eyes turning toward the unfolding scene. Thomas stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. "Patricia, this is none of your business," Thomas said, his voice tense with restrained anger. "None of my business?" She laughed bitterly, the sound devoid of any humor. "You destroyed our marriage because of your inability to keep your pants on, and now you're trying to legitimize the fruit of your mistake?" The words hit Amanda like physical slaps. Each syllable carried years of bitterness and resentment, dripping poison onto the memories she had just uncovered in her mother's letters. "Enough!" Thomas's voice thundered through the cafe, making several people shrink back in their seats. "I won't allow you to speak about my daughter like that." Patricia smiled maliciously, her perfectly painted lips curling into a cruel expression. "Your daughter? 3 weeks ago you didn't even know she existed. And now, are you going to include her in the will? Give her a share of the company my father helped build?" "Actually," Amanda interrupted, calmly rising from her chair, her voice surprisingly firm despite the turmoil in her chest, "I don't want any of that. Not the company, not the money, not the Mitchell name." "Amanda?" Thomas began, but she raised a hand to silence him. "No, let me finish," Amanda said, turning to face Patricia directly. "You're right about one thing, 3 weeks ago he didn't know I existed. But do you know what else he didn't know? What kind of person I've become. That I've spent the last 5 years working 2 jobs to pay for my sister's college. That I've learned to be strong, independent, and honorable, thanks to my mother and the man who actually raised me like a daughter." For a moment, Patricia seemed speechless, her eyes wide with the intensity in Amanda's voice. Thomas watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and deep sadness. "So no, I don't want anything material from my biological father," Amanda continued, her voice growing stronger. "The only thing I want is the truth. And now," she raised the letters like a shield against Patricia's cruelty, "I finally have it." The silence that followed was heavy and thick, broken only by the distant clinking of cups and the muffled hum of the city outside. It was then that Thomas's phone vibrated loudly on the table. His face visibly paled as he read the message. "What is it?" Amanda asked, noticing his alarmed expression. It's about the company, he said, his voice tense with worry. Someone leaked information about you to the press. Stocks are plummeting. The board is calling an emergency meeting. Let me guess, Patricia said with a cruel smile, her eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. They're not too happy to find out the CEO has an illegitimate daughter? Thomas seemed completely devastated, his shoulders slumped under the weight of the situation. Amanda, go, she said softly, though each word seemed to scratch at her throat. Take care of your company. After all, it's all that's ever mattered, right? As Thomas rushed out of the cafe, followed by a triumphant Patricia, Amanda remained seated, her mother's letters in her lap like anchors to reality. A revelation that should have brought clarity had only complicated things further, reopening old wounds and creating new ones. The cafe slowly returned to its usual routine, but Amanda barely noticed. Her fingers traced the words written by her mother so many years ago, each letter a testament to a love that never had the chance to bloom. What she didn't know was that the real complications were just beginning. A storm was approaching, and she was about to find out that some truths come with a much higher price than anyone could have imagined. The next morning, Amanda's face graced the front pages of newspapers and news websites. Secret heir to the Mitchell empire, scandal shakes financial market. Mitchell Enterprises stock had plummeted 15% in less than 24 hours, and rumors of Thomas Mitchell's possible ousting from the company's presidency spread like wildfire. Amanda watched it all from her small apartment, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through her phone screen. Each new headline felt like a stab. Mitchell Enterprises in crisis, family scandal threatens business empire, illegitimate daughter, the secret that could bring down Thomas Mitchell. Her mother's letters were scattered across her bed. She had spent the entire night reading and rereading every word, uncovering a story of love and sacrifice she had never imagined. The modest room, with its peeling walls and worn furniture, seemed even smaller under the weight of the revelations. Each letter was like a window into a past she never knew, each word written by Caroline a testament to the love her mother had kept hidden until the end. You need to see this, Emma said, bursting into the room with her tablet, her face pale with concern. A viral video showed Patricia Reynolds Mitchell giving an exclusive interview on a major morning talk show. The elegant studio and Patricia's flawless makeup contrasted with the cold, calculating look in her eyes. Thomas Mitchell has always been a man of secrets, Patricia said, her voice dripping with venom through the screen. But to hide an illegitimate daughter all these years? And now to bring her out, threatening the stability of the company that generations have built? It's unacceptable. Think of the families of the employees, the investors, everyone who trusted the Mitchell name. Amanda felt her stomach churn. The way Patricia portrayed her, as a threat, an intruder, made her heart ache. Emma squeezed her hand in silent solidarity. The phone began to ring, a number she didn't recognize. Amanda stared at the screen for 3 rings before finally answering, her voice trembling slightly. Miss Santos? The voice on the other end was professional and cold as winter ice. This is James Whitney from the board of directors at Mitchell Enterprises. We would like to schedule a meeting with you. Today, if possible. Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. The formality in his voice carried a veiled threat that she couldn't ignore. What's this about? I believe it would be in your best interest to discuss arrangements that could benefit all parties involved. The current situation is delicate. 3 hours later, Amanda found herself in the imposing boardroom of Mitchell Enterprises. The Italian marble floor and the walls clad in rich wood seemed to mock her simple dress, bought on sale. The executives present, all in suits that probably cost more than her annual rent, watched her with a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed disdain. James Whitney, a middle-aged man with perfectly combed gray hair and a Rolex glinting under the lights, sat at the head of the table like a king on his throne. Beside him, 4 other board members studied her like scientists examining an especially interesting specimen. Miss Santos, Whitney began, his voice smooth like poisoned silk, let's get straight to the point. Your sudden appearance has caused significant instability within our company. The shareholders are nervous, the market is reacting negatively, and our reputation is at risk. Mitchell Enterprises is not just a business, it's a legacy, a tradition of excellence that cannot be compromised by personal matters. I didn't leak the story, Amanda defended herself, struggling to keep her voice steady. The cold air of the room seemed to freeze her bones, but she refused to show weakness. No, you didn't, Whitney agreed with a smile that didn't reach his predator's eyes. But you can help us resolve this situation. In a civilized manner. He slid a thick envelope across the polished mahogany table. The sound of the paper gliding over the wood echoed in the silent room like a sinister whisper. Inside this envelope, there's a check and a confidentiality agreement. The amount is substantial. In exchange, you agree to never contact Thomas Mitchell again or claim any connection to Mitchell Enterprises. It will be as if this whole story never happened. Amanda stared at the envelope as if it contained a venomous snake. Her hands trembled beneath the table, but her voice remained steady. You want to buy me? Make me disappear like some inconvenient mistake? We want to protect a company that employs thousands of people, Whitney corrected, his condescending tone making Amanda's blood boil. Your father? Well, Thomas Mitchell has lost objectivity in this situation. As the board, it's our responsibility to act in the best interest of the shareholders. Sometimes tough decisions need to be made. And where is Thomas now? Amanda asked, noticing his absence from the room with growing unease. Mr. Mitchell is temporarily stepping down from his executive duties, another board member replied, a man with gold-rimmed glasses and an impatient expression. For his own good. Amanda felt her blood boil. Her mother's words from the letters echoed in her mind, words about courage, about dignity, about not bowing down to injustice. For his good or for your own? Miss Santos, Whitney interjected, his patience clearly running out, though his smile remained artificial. Be reasonable. This agreement could change your life. You and your sister would never have to worry about money again. Think of her future, the opportunities you could give her. Isn't that what a good sister would do? The mention of Emma made something snap inside Amanda. The blatant manipulation, the attempt to use her love for her sister as a weapon, was the last straw. Just then, the door to the boardroom swung open violently, the crash making several executives jump in their Italian leather chairs. Thomas Mitchell stormed into the room, his face flushed with rage and his usually immaculate suit slightly rumpled. What is this meeting? Thomas thundered, his eyes scanning the room before fixing on Amanda. How dare you summon my daughter without my knowledge? Thomas, Whitney said calmly as if speaking to a petulant child, you're suspended. You shouldn't be here. This is still my company, Thomas retorted, slamming his fist on the table. And you have no right to. No right? Whitney interrupted, rising with feline grace. You hid an illegitimate daughter for decades. You lied in corporate documents. You jeopardized the entire legacy of Mitchell Enterprises because of a past affair. The board has every right to protect the company's interests. Amanda watched the exchange of accusations with a sudden, painful clarity. This wasn't just a family conflict. It was a battle for power. Her emergence had given Thomas's enemies the ammunition they needed to bring him down. She was merely a pawn in a much larger game. I don't need to hear any more, she said, rising with a dignity that surprised everyone. I won't sign any agreement. Think carefully, Whitney warned, his smile finally fading. This may be your only chance to. To what? Amanda interrupted, her voice sharp as steel. To sell my dignity? To deny who I am? To betray my mother's memory? No, thank you. I've seen enough of the corporate world for one day. She walked toward Thomas, who watched her with a mix of pride and palpable concern. The arrogant man from the restaurant was gone, replaced by someone who seemed both stronger and more vulnerable. Let's get out of here, she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. We have a lot to talk about. As they walked out of the conference room, Whitney made one final attempt. If you walk out that door, there will be no turning back. Think of your sister, her future. Do you really want to sacrifice everything for a man who has never been present in your life? Amanda paused for a moment, her hand on the doorknob. The silence in the room was deafening, each breath audible in the tense air. You know, Mr. Whitney, she said, turning to face the board one last time, I learned something from my mother's letters. She chose to protect me instead of accepting easy money. She chose her dignity over comfort. And looking at you now, I'm sure she made the right choice. In the elevator, Thomas finally broke the suffocating silence. You didn't have to do that. I would have understood if I had accepted the money? Amanda completed, watching their reflections in the elevator mirror, her eyes, his stubborn chin. Maybe. But then I wouldn't be my mother's daughter. And apparently I wouldn't be yours either. Thomas swallowed hard, unshed tears shimmering in his eyes. They'll try to destroy me now. And they might try to hurt you too. It's going to get very ugly before it gets better. Let them try, Amanda replied with a determination that surprised them both. After all, I'm a Mitchell, aren't I? Even if I've never used the name. What neither of them knew was that, at that very moment, 17 floors above them, Patricia Reynolds Mitchell was making a call that would change everything. With a cruel smile on her perfectly painted lips, she dialed a number that few knew. Hello? Yes, it's time. Execute the plan? Her voice oozed with venomous satisfaction. Let's show Thomas Mitchell and his precious bastard exactly what happens when you mess with the Reynolds family. The real battle was only just beginning, and Amanda was about to discover that sometimes the greatest wars are fought not in boardrooms, but in the hearts of those we love. And some truths, once revealed, have the power to destroy much more than just reputations. The night was falling over the city when Amanda received the call that would change everything. It was an unknown number, and the voice on the other end sounded hoarse and nervous. Miss Santos? My name is Richard Cooper. I was Thomas Mitchell's personal assistant for 15 years, until I was fired last week. We need to talk. It's about your mother. Amanda felt her heart stop for a moment. What do you know about my mother? Not over the phone, Richard replied. Meet me at the Vintage Cafe in an hour. Bring the letters. The Vintage Cafe was a discreet place, almost empty at that hour. Richard Cooper was a thin, middle-aged man, with deep dark circles under his eyes and hands that couldn't stop trembling. Patricia Reynolds isn't telling you everything, he began, looking nervously around. Your mother didn't just disappear. She was forced to leave. Amanda felt the blood freeze in her veins. What do you mean? Patricia found out about the affair before anyone else. She and her father, Benjamin Reynolds, orchestrated the whole thing. They threatened your mother, told her they would destroy her career if she didn't disappear. And when they found out about the pregnancy? Richard paused, swallowing hard. Benjamin Reynolds was a powerful and dangerous man. He had connections with people who could make his problems disappear. Are you saying they threatened to kill my mother? Amanda asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Worse. They threatened you still in the womb. Caroline had no choice but to run. Amanda felt the world spin. Her mother's letters now took on a much darker meaning. Every word of love and farewell had been written under the shadow of fear. Thomas never knew about this, Richard continued. Patricia and her father made sure he believed that Caroline abandoned him for money. But I knew. I saw the documents, heard the conversations. Why are you telling me this now? Because Patricia is following in her father's footsteps. Last week, I overheard a conversation of hers. She's planning something big, something that will destroy both Thomas and you. I had to warn you. The sound of glass breaking interrupted the conversation. A stone had shattered the cafe window, bringing with it a note tied to it. Keep your mouth shut, Cooper. Richard stood up in panic. They followed me. I have to go. But look in the old company files, folder 847B. There's evidence there, if it hasn't been destroyed yet. Before Amanda could respond, Richard had already disappeared through the back door. With trembling hands, she called Thomas. I need to get into the company tonight, she said without preamble. And I need you not to ask any questions. There was a long silence on the other end. Amanda, the company isn't safe for you right now. The board? Dad, she interrupted, the words still strange on her tongue. Please? It's about Mom. Another pause. Meet me at the service entrance in half an hour. The Mitchell Enterprises building was nearly empty, with only a few security guards making their rounds. Thomas guided Amanda through dimly lit corridors to a room filled with old files. What exactly are we looking for? He asked, watching Amanda sift through the shelves. 847B, she murmured, her fingers gliding over the dusty folders. Here? The folder was there, yellowed with age, but its contents made both their blood run cold. Surveillance photos of a pregnant Caroline. Records of threats. An unsigned non-disclosure agreement with the Reynolds Industries watermark. My God, Thomas whispered, his voice choking. All this time, I thought that she had abandoned you for money, Amanda finished. That's what they wanted you to believe. The sound of heels in the hallway made them both freeze. The door swung open, revealing Patricia. What a touching scene, she said with a cruel smile. Father and daughter, finally united. Too bad it won't last. Behind her, two men in suits entered the room. The documents, please, Patricia demanded, extending her hand. All of them. It's over, Patricia, Thomas said, his voice trembling with rage. The truth has come out. Truth? She laughed. The truth is you're trespassing. The truth is, tomorrow the newspapers will publish photos of both of you stealing confidential company documents. The truth, dear Thomas, is that you'll never see your precious daughter again. That's when something unexpected happened. Emma, who had secretly followed Amanda, appeared in the doorway, cell phone in hand. The truth, Mrs. Reynolds, Emma said with a triumphant smile, is being broadcast live right now to over 10,000 followers. including several journalists. Patricia's face drained of color. On Emma's phone, the live stream not only showed the current scene but also the entire previous confession about the threats to Caroline. This is unacceptable, Patricia stammered. You can't. Actually, we can, interrupted a new voice. James Whitney entered the room, followed by other members of the board. And we already have. James? Patricia looked lost. What are you doing here? Doing the right thing for the first time in years, Whitney replied. The board convened an emergency session an hour ago. We have enough evidence to launch an investigation into the actions of the Reynolds family over all these years. The security guards accompanying Patricia exchanged nervous glances before slowly retreating. You can't do this. Patricia screamed, her polished veneer completely shattered. My father built this empire. Your father built an empire based on threats and manipulation, Whitney corrected. And now, finally, we can right those wrongs. Amanda watched the scene unfold with a mix of shock and relief. Beside her, Thomas held the photos of Caroline with trembling hands. She tried to tell me, he murmured. All those letters, she tried to reach out. She never stopped loving you, Amanda said softly. Until the end. And me? Thomas asked, turning to face her. Do I have your forgiveness? Amanda looked at her father, no longer the tyrant of the restaurant, but a man broken by the weight of decades of lies and manipulation. We're getting there, she replied, allowing herself a small smile. The following day, the newspapers would have very different headlines to publish. Caroline Mitchell's story would finally be told, not as a scandal, but as a testament to love and sacrifice. And somewhere, Amanda was sure her mother was smiling. But as Patricia was escorted out of the building, her final glance held a sinister promise. The truth had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Some secrets, once revealed, have the power to unleash consequences no one can predict. And Amanda? She was just beginning to discover that her mother's legacy was much more than a few old letters. It was a story of courage, resistance, and above all, unconditional love. A legacy she would now have to protect, no matter the cost. 1 week after the confrontation at Mitchell Enterprises, Amanda was in her apartment, organizing the last photos and documents they had found in the company's files. The case had gained national attention, with investigations being launched against Patricia Reynolds and several executives connected to the late Benjamin Reynolds. The doorbell rang, startling Amanda. It was Richard Cooper, the former assistant, looking even more haggard than before. We need to talk, he said, entering hurriedly. There's more you need to know. About your mother's death. Amanda felt her blood run cold. What do you mean? The cancer. Richard hesitated, running a tired hand over his face. It wasn't natural. Caroline was investigating Benjamin Reynolds' illegal activities when she got sick. Very sick very quickly. Are you suggesting that? Amanda couldn't finish the sentence, the horror of the implication weighing heavily on her chest. Poisoning through prolonged exposure to toxic substances, Richard finished, pulling more documents from his briefcase. I managed to access her medical records. The type of cancer, the rapid progression. Everything points to manipulation. Amanda stumbled toward the sofa, her legs too weak to hold her up. The memories of her mother's last days flooded her mind. The suffering, the rapid deterioration, the doctors baffled by the aggressive nature of the disease. Why are you telling me this now? She asked, her voice trembling. Because Patricia is using the same contacts as her father. The same people who... He swallowed hard. Who silenced your mother. Amanda's phone vibrated. Thomas was calling, urgently asking her to meet him at the office. When she arrived, she found her father pale and agitated. I just received this, he said, showing an envelope. Inside there was a single photo. Caroline, days before she died, in her hospital bed. On the back, a message written in elegant handwriting. Como me, como filha. As mother, as daughter. It's a threat, Amanda said, feeling the fear spread through her veins like ice. They're going to try? I won't let them, Thomas interrupted, his voice thick with fierce determination. I lost your mother once because of cowardice. I won't lose you too. The sound of high heels in the corridor made them both turn. Patricia entered, more elegant than ever in her Chanel suit, a predatory smile on her red lips. What a lovely moment, she said. Enjoying your last moments together? It's over, Patricia, Thomas growled. We have enough evidence to destroy you and your father's dirty legacy. Evidence? She laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. Like the evidence Caroline had? Oh wait, it died with her, didn't it? Amanda stepped forward, her anger overcoming her fear. My mother may be gone, but her legacy lives on. In me. For now, Patricia replied softly, pulling something out of her bag. It was a small perfume bottle. You know, your mother loved the perfume I gave her as a gift. She wore it every day, without knowing that each spritz was slowly killing her. The horror of the revelation hit Amanda like a physical punch. Thomas moved toward Patricia, but she stepped back, still holding the bottle. She warned. One wrong move and everyone in this room will find out what makes this perfume so special. Why? Amanda asked, tears streaming down her face. Why so much hate? Hate? Patricia laughed. No, darling. It's business. It's always been about business. Your father was about to discover the company's illegal operations when he met your mother. Caroline became an inconvenient distraction. And now you're following in her footsteps. What Patricia didn't realize was that Emma had followed Amanda into the office, recording everything through the crack of the door. She also didn't notice James Whitney and other members of the board quietly approaching down the hall. Do you know what my father's mistake was? Patricia continued, raising the bottle. He waited too long with Caroline. I won't make the same mistake. No, you won't, Whitney said from the door, making Patricia turn sharply. Because it's over. Police officers emerged from every corner of the office. Patricia, in panic, tried to run, but Thomas was faster, grabbing her arm and knocking the bottle to the floor where it shattered. Thomas, please, Patricia begged as the officers cuffed her. I did it all for you, for us. No, Thomas replied, pulling Amanda protectively into his arms. You did it all for power. And now you'll pay for every life you destroyed. As Patricia was led away, shouting threats and accusations, Amanda allowed herself to collapse into her father's arms. Years of mystery finally unraveled, an old pain finally understood. She's gone, Amanda whispered, not just referring to Patricia. But it still hurts so much. I know, Thomas replied, tears also streaming down his face. But now we can honor her memory the right way. Together. Emma joined the embrace, forming a circle of protection and love that Caroline would have loved to see. The truth had come at a high cost, a life lost, years of separation, unimaginable pain. But it had also brought redemption, justice, and finally, healing. The next day, the newspapers would announce Patricia Reynolds' arrest and the discovery of a corporate crime network that spanned decades. Caroline Mitchell's story would no longer be just a footnote in a corporate scandal, but the catalyst that exposed one of the largest corporate conspiracies in the country. Thomas Mitchell resigned as president of the company, choosing to focus on rebuilding his relationship with Amanda and creating a foundation in Caroline's memory, an organization dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and victims of corporate crimes. Amanda kept working as a waitress for a few more weeks, not out of necessity but by choice. Every table served was a tribute to her mother, a reminder that dignity has no price. And on a quiet afternoon, Amanda, Thomas, and Emma visited Caroline's grave together for the first time. On the tombstone, Amanda placed the letters her mother had written, no longer buried secrets, but testimonies of a love that survived death. She would be proud of you, Thomas said softly. Of us. Amanda held her father's hand, feeling the weight of a legacy she now fully understood. She always was, she replied. We just needed to be ready to see it. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. A gentle breeze carried the scent of the flowers they had brought, lilies, Caroline's favorites. And in that moment, Amanda felt a peace she had never known before. The truth had come at a great cost, but the price of redemption, though high, had been worth every moment. The Mitchell empire might have fallen, but something far more valuable had been built upon its ruins. A family united not by blood or power, but by love, truth, and forgiveness. And somewhere Caroline was smiling. 6 months had passed since Patricia Reynolds' arrest. Mitchell Enterprises had been completely restructured, now under new leadership and with strict policies of corporate transparency and ethics. Thomas, no longer CEO, remained as a consultant, dedicating most of his time to the Caroline Mitchell Foundation. On a sunny Sunday morning, Amanda opened the doors of Caroline's Place, her new restaurant in the heart of the city. The establishment, partly funded by the compensation Mitchell Enterprises had paid the family, was a dream come true. Not only hers but also her mother's. The restaurant had a welcoming atmosphere, with soft-colored walls and black and white photographs showcasing moments from Caroline's life. Prominently displayed near the entrance was the last photo they had taken together, both smiling at the camera, unaware it would be their last Christmas. Emma, now in her second year of medical school, helped out on weekends, charming customers with the same warm smile she had inherited from Caroline. Thomas visited the restaurant nearly every day, always sitting at the same table by the window, where he could watch his daughter transform a business into a home. "You know," Thomas said on that special opening morning, "your mother always wanted to open a restaurant. She used to say that food wasn't just sustenance, it was a way of showing love." Amanda smiled, adjusting the apron that now had "owner" embroidered on the pocket. "That's why every dish here tells a story. The risotto is the recipe she made when I was sick. The apple pie is Grandma Margaret's. And the steak, it's the dish she served the night we met," Thomas finished, his eyes shining with memories. The restaurant quickly became known not only for its excellent food but for its unique, welcoming atmosphere. Amanda made it a point to get to know every customer, share stories, and build connections. It was her way of honoring her mother's legacy, not through a business empire, but through moments of genuine humanity. The Caroline Mitchell Foundation, operating from an office upstairs in the restaurant, had already helped dozens of people expose abusive corporate practices. Each case resolved was a small victory against the type of corruption that had taken Caroline from them. One quiet evening, after closing hours, Amanda found Thomas staring at the photo of Caroline. "Sometimes," he said softly, "when the restaurant is full and you're going between tables, smiling and chatting with everyone, it's like she's here." Amanda took her father's hand. "She is. In every meal served, in every person helped by the foundation, in every moment we share. She lives through the good we do." A new waitress approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, Ms. Amanda, but there's someone in the kitchen who wants to speak with you. They say it's about a case for the foundation." Amanda exchanged a meaningful glance with Thomas. Another life to try to help, another story to hear, another chance to make a difference. "You know," she said, adjusting her apron, "Mom always said it's not the big gestures that change the world, but the small acts of kindness repeated every day." "She was right," Thomas replied. As always, as Amanda walked toward the kitchen, ready to hear another story and possibly change another life, she felt that comforting certainty that only comes when we're exactly where we're supposed to be, doing exactly what we're meant to do. Caroline's place was more than just a restaurant, it was a testament to the power of love, truth, and redemption. It was proof that even from the greatest tragedies, the most beautiful stories of new beginnings can be born. And somewhere Caroline kept smiling, knowing that her legacy was in good hands. Wow, what an incredible story, right? The moments of tension, the surprising revelations, and most of all, this beautiful message about forgiveness and redemption. Tell me in the comments, what would you do in Amanda's shoes? Would you have the courage to face it all like she did? If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the Life Stories channel and hit the bell so you won't miss our next emotional stories. Every like and subscription helps us keep bringing quality content to you. Also, share this with that special person who needs to hear about the power of forgiveness and truth. Sometimes one story can change everything. See you in the next story.